So, video today is going to be going over the biggest lessons I learned in 2024, losing over $1 million. Now, a lot of the other videos and content that I'll be putting out, I like to speak about the positive sides of things, whether that be the strategies I've used over the last half decade to grow businesses or do anything like that. But today, I think the biggest thing is the biggest costly mistakes of my career, and I would say this was the second biggest, most costly mistake riddled year that I've ever had. So, although we grew in 2024, a lot of the things went well. There were some horrific mistakes that I made, and in this video, I'm going to go over the things that you want to avoid and the things that you really want to pay attention to when you're growing, scaling companies and have a really aggressive, opportunity-based mindset that's always positive. Okay. So you said that's $1 million in cash that I lost. So I'm not talking about like potential losses or anything like that. Like, no, I literally lost, when you equate it out over that year, $83,000 a month of cash out of my pocket from money that was being made or money that I had from basically just terribly costly mistakes. So let's start. So number one is going to be partnerships, okay? So really watch who you partner with, okay? This is one of the biggest things. I always have a very positive mindset going into a lot of partnerships. And whatever that may be, whether it be a revenue share, joint venture, basic business relationship or partnership, or when you go in 50-50 on an equity share. So I had two companies where one of the companies was controlled by an outside party who was my business partner, and one of the companies was controlled by myself, but they were essentially 50-50. Now, the biggest thing you want to learn, well, not essentially, it was 50-50. The biggest thing I want you to learn from this is really vet every possible situation before going into a partnership. Now, I don't mean just, run the numbers, do all these things. Think about, okay, worst case, in this industry, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? So, for example, being a director, what does that mean for you? A lot of people don't understand that being a director is a terrible thing sometimes, because if the other director does something bad under the business, your name is permanently wrecked inside of whatever legal body that is. Now, luckily that didn't happen to me, but I just know that being a director is a very risky thing. So one of the biggest things is going into partnerships with negatives for yourself covered. Now, that could be monetary, that could be just making sure you don't have liability. It could be anything like that. But what happened to me was basically when something happened that was bad on their side of the agreement, they'd start to remove access from things, and they'd start to really not even remove access, but just not be open about what was happening and really cause big issues in terms of communication between yourself. So that basically when you're asking about things of how the other company's going, there was never clear tracking and kind of clear numbers of where we were sitting, because they were so focused on other things, the other business partners. So that was a big learning curve. It's making sure that when you're going into it, there's very clear expectations of where you're going. There's very clear tracking. There's very clear contracts, okay, saying that in the event of this happens, so that you can shield yourself from liability. Because there's only two ways, and people aren't going to like this next comment, especially people who potentially are married, but there's only two ways people can really lose money. It's taking big unnecessary risks, and it's also getting screwed over in a partnership, which may be a relationship or something like that, like a marriage where you get all your money taken or something like that. So they're the two biggest ways that you lose money. So that's what you really want to avoid. You want to hedge yourself against the big losses, because even if you make $1 million a year, one $10 million loss can send you bankrupt. So that's what you really want to avoid. And taking $1 million loss, I have a lot of properties and I have a lot of investments, but I really struggled to be able to get all of that money ready. The businesses were making money, but outlaying that much after tax, after all of that, was still a lot. And in the end, I had to end up selling one of the properties that I own. And that gave me about $300,000 to help finish off the million for the year, because it was a bit over $1 million in losses. So that's one of the biggest things to learn is clear contracts, clear expectations, and all of this at the start. How are we going to terminate? Plan it to end. It will end. It just might not happen today, tomorrow. It might happen in 10 years, 20 years. And trust me, imagine you put in 20 years of work just to be fucked over in the end. So that's partnerships. Now, next is going to be HR, so human resources. Biggest mistakes, I didn't have as accurate tracking as I could have. So what I've recently learned since consulting with a bunch of lawyers last year, I spent in excess of $300,000 on lawyers last year, on everything, whether that be contracts or getting things sorted out that I didn't need to. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail. I don't want to have to disclose company names or anything like that in this, but I'll try to give as much detail as I possibly can without incriminating anything. And that is basically watching out about HR and having clear policies. Now, everyone knows about Fair Work and all these other things, and I know everyone probably thinks, oh, I'm never going to get involved in this, nothing's ever going to happen to me, my employees love me. But at the time, I had over 100 employees between all my portfolio of companies. So it's pretty easy for someone to not like the manager above them, the team leader above them, and they come after the company. That's very, very easy for it to happen, and that's exactly what happened. So you really have to have very, very clear guidance on when you are making big decisions, okay? So legal guidance, whatever that may be. So since this year, I've looked into, for example, what we're actually going to be doing moving forward in terms of legal guidance. So we've brought on an agency that we're looking to engage in about 14 days, and that is going to be year-round support in legal for retainer basis. So in the portfolio of companies, I'm basically bringing on not a full-time legal counsel or anything like that, but a company that I have access to 24/7 for when we're scaling again. Because having guidance on contracts, on having clear procedure for firing, clear procedure for lack of performance, clear procedure for redundancy, clear procedure for tracking week after week of your employees' movements so that you have reasons to fire them and documentation to back yourself up. That is very, very important, because realistically in the Australian market, people aren't going to like to hear this, but 90% of employees are going to be useless, unfortunately. They're barely going to pay for themselves. They're barely going to work 8 hours a day, and they probably won't. They'll want work-life balance, and it's not like there's anything wrong with that. But you want to find the top 10%, and you want to be able to manage the bottom 90%. There's nothing wrong with what I've just said. It's just you need to know where it stands and how to manage both sides. So that's HR. Make sure you have clear policies inside of your company in a company document, okay? Set up a company document. Next, like this document, by the way, explains like post-firing practices. So for example, after they've been fired, what they can and can't do, otherwise will pursue you as personal liability. And make sure that whatever is in the contract, you check with a lawyer, you check with someone who's in the different sectors. So like work health and safety, for example, in a workplace. Then there is also like basic, like just legal regulations that you have to follow. But then the biggest one is Fair Work. So Fair Work really loves, in Australia, they love Fair Work. Employees love taking people to Fair Work because they always favour the employee over the employer. And that's just how it is as well. They can't cry about it if you're a business owner. You just have to accept that's how it is and try and move forward, okay? So the next biggest thing I would have to say is tracking and operations as well. Now, I could have potentially cut losses a little bit early and probably lost only $600,000-$700,000 instead of $1 million, because I was pulling money out of one of my companies and putting it into these issues that I was having, and there was not clear tracking around basically, honestly, free cash flow. So there's a difference between profit every month and free cash flow. So free cash flow is obviously the amount that actually enters in cash into your business versus not. And what happened is maybe 2 months out of the 12 months, we got to a point where we keep a cash reserve of 6 figures in the bank account, and that ran. This company does that I was talking about, that I was pulling cash from, is doing approximately, I won't even say, but a fair few $1 million a year, not over 10 million, but under 10 million. And I was pulling cash out of that, and the free cash flow wasn't being supported because I was pulling at the start of the year over $100,000 a month out of that company. And then I had to lend the company money from my own name in the excess of like 150, 200,000 temporarily over like a couple month period whenever we would need it. So that's also something you really want to avoid is having tracking in your business. And again, all these extremes, don't do these extremes. They're not worth doing just for a little bit extra. Now, I know because of who I am that this is kind of how it is for me, meaning like I will aim really, really high, but it also means this time I failed really, really hard. And losing over 7 figures is in just cash is really, really significant. Plus losing the control of those 2 companies as well, needing to sell. So that was not good, and taking it way less, like needing to sell. So I now don't have those 2 companies because I had to get rid of them. So that's some pretty big lessons that I learned. Making sure partners, you really watch out about partnerships, because realistically in business, You have to make sure there's an offer on both sides, meaning it's a positive on one side and a positive on another side, because that is the biggest way. If someone feels like their side's dropping, they'll try to raise themselves by stealing money from you, and that's just how it works. You're not their family, you're not even their best friend. You're just there to help them make money. As soon as they don't make money, they'll try to fuck you over. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's just how it is, unfortunately. So then there's HR, making sure you have clear policies in place, clear guidance in place, and when you're scaling, you have very clear tracking for employees week on week of their current actions and movements. Okay. Next is going to be, and not without saying this, is basic tracking of everything financial, because money is how the business grows. A lot of people don't like to talk about that money is the goal in business, but unfortunately money is the goal in business, because without money, the business doesn't grow, you don't hit your goals. Like for example, BizLeads this year, we have massive goals in terms of growth, and we need cash to do that. So what do you think we're gonna do? We're not gonna be charging $2 for a service. We're gonna be charging for the best quality service. We're gonna be charging the price that it demands, and that's how we're gonna be growing. And that will bring in cash, which we can then use to grow and expand the business. I'm currently in the Gold Coast office, and that's just how it is. So full operational tracking, making sure your HR is rock solid, and making sure that your partnerships, if you have any, are rock solid, and making sure that you're both happy, both in open communication, and not in different states. Number one, don't be in different states. You can do it, but there's no point. Just be in the same state. However you can do that if you're with a partner. I'm not saying you need to not do it, but even if it's meeting regularly and not being in the same state, just have regular in-person communication and really talk of real numbers, weekly or fortnightly, real numbers, okay? So that's basically everything that's happened over the last kind of year. It's 2025 now. Right now, as of the recording, it's the 29th of January, 2025. And basically I lost over $1 million in 2024. Take 3 of these lessons. Don't repeat the same mistakes. If you need any advice, please comment on any platforms that this is being posted on, and I will send over free personalized advice on what to avoid and what steps to take based on the business that you're in, because I never want anyone to go through what it feels like losing that much money in a single year of cash. Yes, I made money in other businesses, cool, but losing that much money seriously hurts. It's 2 Lamborghinis. I lost 2 Lamborghinis paid in cash in 2024. Think about that. It's an absolutely absurd amount of money, stolen by partners, screwed over by HR, and poor tracking, which then poor tracking led to me having to not cut losses maybe a couple $100,000 earlier. So hopefully that was valuable, guys. I know it's a fairly straightforward documentation style post, but if you see this, please do comment. I want to help as much as I can. I don't want people to make the same mistakes on these 3 things. So I'll speak to you guys soon. My name is James Lewis, and I'll speak to you guys soon.